down that camera and strap in. It's time for another episode of TogCHAT Live. Get ready for 60 minutes of wall-to-wall photography, including photo news and tips, along with your photography questions in real time, with answers from your host, Olympus Visionary Joe Edelman.
Hey gang, welcome to episode number 220 of TogCHAT Live. Already, we've got people tuning in here from all over the world, so please, if you haven't done so, be sure to check in, leave a comment, let me know where you are in the world. It's always cool to see so many people from so many different countries tuning in to chat about their love of photography. We got Lynn sneaking in there at the last minute just so that I'll read her name, from New York, and Alan from Denmark, and Ken from LA, and Marcos from Chile. I got Alvin here from Virginia, G. Phillips from San Diego. We got FN89 from Ottawa. Let's see here. We got people from all over the place. Lawrence is here from the Philippines, like all the way on the other side of the world. And Malcolm's here from right down the road, like literally. So I hope that all of you are healthy and you're safe. And of course, still practicing your social distancing. And gang, you know I have a serious favor to ask of you. You see that thumbs up down there? Like right down there. Please click it. I'm going to help you work really hard on your photography in the next 60 minutes. It would help more people find my channel and, of course, find TogCHAT if you would hit that thumbs up. And while you're looking down there, feel free to go ahead and share. Hit that share button, right? Let your photography friends know that we are streaming live on YouTube right now. Or you can share the link that I just put in the chat window. It's tog.chat/live. Twitter, Facebook, they're the fastest ways to go ahead and get the word out. Don't keep this all to yourself. So how can I help you guys tonight? Right? We're here to talk about photography, and since you're here, you might as well learn something. So start posting your questions. I got a few, but we still got plenty of time. And I've got a short topic tonight, so I'll be able to get a lot of questions in. So I will do my best to answer them all in the next 60 minutes. And remember, this is a camera-free zone. We'll talk about the hows and the whys behind creating great images and marketing yourself as a photographer. That might include gear if it's a question about how to do something. But I'm not going to tell you what your next camera or lens should be. You shouldn't listen to anybody on YouTube when it comes to that. And folks, please, I know it's fun to chat, but I'm going to ask you to save the chat for questions so that you don't miss anything important and so that I don't miss any of your questions among all the chat noise. Remember, we're here to learn. Oh, and remember that TogCHAT is also available for download as a podcast every week. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share that link for you in the chat window, and it's in the show notes below. If you can't stay for the whole show tonight, you can, of course, watch the replay here on YouTube or catch the podcast so that you can listen on the go. The show is available on iTunes, Google, Spotify, Amazon, all the major podcast platforms. I post the podcast a few hours after the end of the live show each week, so it'll be live tonight. So let's go ahead and dig into tonight's Tog topic, shall we? For years now, I have been telling photographers, don't be afraid to suck. Unfortunately, most new and young photographers are afraid to suck, and so they avoid the absolute best learning habit that exists: failure. Science has proven in numerous ways that embracing failure is a great way to fast-track your learning process. I can tell you that it worked for me as a teenager, and I've reconnected with that concept in the last few years as a photo educator, and it has allowed me to create things that I never would have considered before. Alas, most photographers, it seems, are not willing to accept the science. And while they won't embrace failure, the fact is they still fail by producing images that they are not happy with or proud of. So I want to suggest an alternative technique that does not require embracing failure. I still believe you should do that, but I get it. Some of you just can't. So this option has existed honestly for as long as photography has existed. And unfortunately, still very few photographers make this learning technique a habit. I honestly do consider this to be the most valuable technique that you can employ to improve your photography. However, just like anything else, it does require effort. And by the way, a lot of you on social media today guessed that the answer to my topic tonight was practice. Practice is just a given, folks. You got to practice. So, no, that's actually not my technique. Let me describe. A normal workflow for most photographers, myself included, is to shoot images and then return home and download them to the computer. Then we eagerly cull through the shoot and we find the best image or images, and then we process them and we either deliver them and, of course, post them to social media. When we're done with this, we file the images away, sometimes never to be seen again. That, folks, is a missed opportunity to improve your photography. Photographers tend to do the shoot, find a few images they like, celebrate, and then file the images away and move on. They rarely take the time to consider the failures, to ask why they don't like that image. They don't consider how they could have improved it. Keep in mind, folks, these are images of something that you experienced with a camera in your hands. These are images that didn't succeed. You decided they didn't succeed. I'm not talking about a response to a client not liking your work or to some jerk on social media. This is a response to you, the creator of the image, who is not happy with the result. Science tells us that this post-shoot review will actually have a very similar learning effect as the actual experience, and potentially even better. But keep in mind, learning only has good effects when learners have the desire to absorb the knowledge. So think about it. Indeed, in the middle of a photo shoot, when you are paying attention to your gear and your subject and your exposure and lighting and composition and posing, it is difficult to find the bandwidth to actually learn from that experience in real time. But by making time shortly after the shoot to review the images that weren't selected and consider how they can be improved and what it would take to do that. By doing so, you will make stronger memories and, a little science, you will build better neural connections that will essentially rescue you the next time you come across that situation. I like to refer to building these neural connections as building your visual database. We all, especially as adults, have this experiential database that we've built throughout our lives. This is that massive database in our heads that reminds us of the consequences of touching a hot stovetop or staying up too late the night before an important meeting or job. For photographers, a visual database is what allows us to identify harsh light in a scene and alert us to the need to soften the light. The visual database makes sure that we don't miss the twisted bikini strap, or worse yet, the hairband on the wrist of a model. The visual database helps us identify details, both big and small, that can have a negative impact on the outcome of our photographs. These connections that I'm talking about will pop into your mind faster the next time that you have a camera in your hands, almost as if they'd been an actual experience. And folks, I'm sorry, but you can't get the same kind of recall from a YouTube video or a book or a conversation. It just doesn't work that way. Science has taught us that as adults, if we want to learn, we must be willing to actively be involved in the experience. And then we must take the time to reflect on the experience. It is the reflection part that solidifies the learning and builds your visual database. So, my simple advice is to spend more time with your failed shots. Because even though you don't want to fail, we all have them. Ask yourself some simple questions like, why don't you like the shot? What could you have done to improve it? How could you go about accomplishing that? Reflecting on your shoot and your decisions while they're still fresh in your mind will build your visual database quicker and will lead you to make better decisions in real time that will ultimately improve your photography faster. And folks, one little piece here. If you are looking at your work and you can't see room for improvement, I don't want to hear that I am too new to photography and I don't know what should be improved. That's crap. That's lazy. If you can't look at your own work and see room for improvement, then my honest and sincere advice to you as a photographer, don't spend another penny on camera equipment. Give it up, walk away, because you're wasting your time. You will not improve that way. Just keeping it real. So I've got just 2 quick news updates for you this week. TetherTools, who is one of my sponsors, has announced an update to their Smart Shooter 4 software that integrates directly with Lightroom Classic as a plugin. And specifically, I just want to point out, because I think this is a great feature. Oh, and by the way, I'm sorry, that plugin works for Sony, Nikon, and Canon shooters. The new version has some new features for the Sony shooters. But I will tell you that for high volume shooters that are doing things like schools and sports teams and that type of stuff, the pro version of Smart Shooter from TetherTools has some excellent features to help manage that process. So you can learn more about it at tethertools.com, or of course, there is a link in the show notes below, and I'll go ahead and drop the link in there in the chat window for you. Okay. And then just one other actually opportunity for you guys. The folks at Savage Universal are running a giveaway where you can win one of their 40-inch black C-stands with grip arm kits. In fact, here, I'll switch my screen over and I'll show you this. These C-stands are like to die for. They really have kind of reimagined the C-stand, excuse me. And there's several elements to it that are amazing, but the biggest thing is the use of the second riser on the short leg. This is great for being able to add a second light, doing vertical clamshell lighting, being able to hold battery packs, all kinds of really, really cool stuff. And honestly, whoever wins this, I'm kind of jealous of you, because while I have a couple of these, mine are the original silver ones, and now they've got the black ones. The black ones are really pretty cool. So to enter the contest, visit their Instagram profile. You can read about it at the link that I just shared there. But if you visit that link, click on the Instagram icon, you'll be able to go and get all of the details. But these things are like having a full production studio in one stand with a junior riser. And like I said, there's a bunch of other cool grip pieces that go with them. So check them out. All right, let's get into the questions. That's what we're here for, right? How can I help you improve your photography? I do have one question that came in from my Facebook group today. And of course, if you haven't joined the Facebook groups yet, why not? It doesn't cost anything. It's an opportunity to learn not only from me, but also from photographers from all around the world. I'm going to drop the links in the chat window there for you. So I'll hit this one question, and I have 2 super chats that came in early tonight. So for those of you the super chats, thank you. I'm going to do your questions as soon as I get through the group one. Let's dig in. So the question that I had that came in from my group is from Mark Brown. And his question is, I'm only doing photography as a hobby, but I really want to get a studio light with a good modeling light in it. As a hobbyist, what studio light do you suggest so that I can see the effects of the light on shadows on my subject's face? So, Mark, the way that you're asking the question leads me to believe that you want to get a flash. But the first thing I would say to you is if you are just a hobbyist and you're looking to start doing portraits or things where you want to be able to do lighting with a person, since that's what you're talking about, I would even suggest that you don't need to go the route of a flash. I would suggest potentially considering an LED light. The benefit to the LED light, Mark, is that what you see is what you get. So you're talking about being able to see the effects of the light and shadows on the subject's face. The minute you turn that light on, you are going to see the shadows with your own eyes. You don't have to take a picture and test it, see how it looks. It's right there in front of you. The only, shall we say, negative, I don't want to call it a negative, but depending on your needs, your future needs, the only potential downside to an LED light is that they are not really bright enough at this point for stopping super fast action, unless you're willing to raise your ISO a little bit. But even then, you're looking at a higher end light like the Stella Pro, the CXL10 that you see behind me. You can absolutely stop action with these lights, but you're not going to do that at ISO 100 or ISO 200. You're going to need to bump your ISO just a little bit. So, one other piece of advice, though, Mark, and this is the same advice that I give to people when it comes to purchasing flashes or studio strobes or anything like that. I really wouldn't recommend that you just go find a light that somebody says, yeah, get this one, it's great, and then you buy it, and then you start to learn to use lighting. That's kind of expensive, and you're probably, in all likelihood, going to wind up down the road getting rid of that light because you are going to outgrow it. I would actually use a little bit of patience and some due diligence. Do a little bit of research, first of all, into the recommendation that I made to you, the differences between LEDs and studio strobes, and then look at it from the standpoint of what would be my dream system? If I was going to, go further down the path, what lights would I like to have? And put your credit card away, map it out on paper. Once you've done that and you know this is the system that I like, these are the lights that I want to get, these are the accessories that I want to get, then you go out and you purchase that one light and a stand. If it's a flash, you'll need a trigger, but you purchase one. And then you learn how to use it. And indeed, like you're asking, you learn how to manage the shadows, etc. Then from there, you add a second one. By doing that little bit of extra work in advance, Mark, you're going to make sure that you're not buying something that you will essentially outgrow quickly and get rid of. What you're actually going to be doing is you're going to be buying into a system that will allow you to grow and do the things that you want to do. Makes your money go a lot further. That's the goal. Okay? All right. So let me get back up here to these super chat questions. So Darko. So first of all, Darko, thank you for the super chat and also for the kind words at the very beginning of the chat tonight. Your question, this is always a fun one because you kind of make me sound like a real, excuse my French folks, but real hard ass, but I'll give you my honest answer. The question is, how do you deal with a model that comes late to a shoot? In fact, here, let me put the first part on the screen, but Darko goes on to explain she doesn't have a real good excuse. And to explain further, this particular case that he's obviously a little bit worked up about is a trade project, a TFP, where he's doing some photos for portfolios and websites. So I'm going to be really honest with you guys. My answer is not going to work for everyone. And it's not a matter of, well, I'm better than you. It's a matter of I'm different than many of you. I don't, as some of you have learned, if you've watched me long enough, I am at a point in my life, and maybe I've always been this way, I probably have, I don't suffer fools very well. So if someone is disrespecting my process, and please keep in mind, I've talked about this a lot. When I work with a model, I go through a lot of prep. So for those of you that may not be aware, I do not just contact somebody on Instagram and be like, hey, you're hot. Let's shoot Saturday. Okay, cool. Bring a bunch of stuff and we'll create. No, that's not my world. My world, I work things out weeks in advance. I know well in advance of the shoot, the outfits that are coming, everything is planned out, mapped out. The expectations are everybody's on the same page and we're good to go. So there's no chances. So keep in mind, I've done all of that work. Somebody's going to show up late or blow me off. I'll be really honest. What I do depends on just how desperately I really want to photograph this person and how bad a mood they have put me in. Why does that matter? For me, it matters because if they have put me in a really bad mood because of disrespecting my time and my process, if I'm in a bad mood, that bad mood is going to carry over into my work that I'm going to do. It's not that I hold a grudge, but if I'm in a bad mood, yeah, I need a little bit of time to chill out. I just do. So I know self-protection. This is a selfish response. I'm owning it. I'm being honest, but I know that I need to cancel that shoot, send that girl home. And if she's not furious with me because of that, then I'll reschedule later. If she is furious, then so be it. I mean, there's plenty of pretty people to photograph and interesting people to photograph. There's no one model that's going to make or break your portfolio. I mean, maybe if somebody gave me the opportunity to photograph Adriana Lima or Heidi Klum or somebody famous, then I that might be a little different, right? But there's no one model that's going to make or break your portfolio. So it's another face. So that's how I deal with it, Darko. I mean, honestly, it's about me. It's about, am I going to be able to let it go, get past it, and work with it in that situation? So part of that, of course, is going to be, how late is she? If she calls me, because inevitably what tends to happen, I hate to throw stereotypes out, but what tends to happen, if you have not done enough planning, and if you have not impressed on that person the importance of on-time arrival, then usually what'll take place is you'll get a phone call like 2 minutes before the arrival time. And it'll be like, well, I'm still like 20 minutes out because there was traffic or whatever. I'm furious at that point. Bottom line, if they're 20 minutes out and it's 2 minutes to the arrival time, they knew quite a while ago they were not going to be on time. So now they have just double disrespected me. I would, and I'll admit, gang, I'm OCD, so I would not do that to someone else. If I'm going to be 20 minutes late, they're going to know more than 20 minutes in advance. Because if I'm going to be 20 minutes late, I know more than 20 minutes in advance that I'm going to be 20 minutes late. And if for some reason I get stuck in a traffic jam, well, I'm going to notify that person immediately. I'm stuck. I'm not sure what's going on, but I'll keep you in the loop. So that's how I make my decision. And honestly, I would at least recommend to any of you that you kind of have to evaluate it from the standpoint of, do you really want to work with this person? Is it worth now moving forward? Are you going to be able to do the things that you want to do? Because the other problem is if they're showing up late enough and then they're not leaving you enough time to be able to work the way you want to work, well, then they're also handicapping you and your ability to make great images, right? Okay. Darko, I hope that helps. And then I had another question here from Mike, which was also a super chat. Mike Hardy, thank you. And I did ask him a follow-up, so I'll tell you the follow-up too. His question was, is there a way to get a fairly defined shadow using a large modifier? He wants to light his subject from head to toe and cast a well-defined shadow up a white cyclorama wall. Okay, so cyclorama wall, folks, are the permanent walls that have the curve in them, in case you don't know. Okay, so I did ask Mike to give me a little bit more detail on the kind of space that he shoots in, and also why he wants to use, specifically why he wants to use a large modifier. So Mike did give me an answer. Let me find it here. He went on to add that he's in a 1,200 square foot studio space, which is a great size. He has a 20 by 20 foot wall, and he wants to light the model head to toe and cast a long shadow up the wall because she will be wearing a lace bunny costume. Okay. So Mike, obviously you're already kind of figuring out some of the issues with that, and that modifier is making it hard for you to get the hard shadow that you're talking about. So there's a couple things at play now. Number one, if you are able to move the model as close to the wall as possible. And folks, remember, since it's a psych, she can't actually stand against the wall. She can get close to it, How close is going to depend on how big the curve is that they have built. That will allow you to define the shadow a little bit more, but it's still going to be fuzzy, right? What I would do as a solution, Mike, is I would shoot with a bare bulb or a flash head if you're using a speed light. That's fine. You could totally do this with a speed light, okay? But I would shoot bare bulb, and that way, if I keep the model fairly close to the sight and back my light up, I am going to have a much sharper, clear defined shadow, which that sounds like what you want. There's one downside. So let's assume for a minute, folks, that the light is placed over here. You're the camera, the photographer. The cyc is behind me. I'm right in front of the cyc. The light's over here. If I let my subject go this way with their face, now 2/3 of their face is in shadow. And depending on how far their face goes, it may not be an attractive shadow. It could be rather ugly, right? So it is important when you do something like that where you're going to work with a bare bulb, if you are still trying to have kind of nice, and I'm going to assume, Mike, that you wanted nice light on your subject's face since you were trying to use a modifier, as long as you keep your subject turned it just needs to be their face. Keep their face turned towards your key light or your main light, you're not going to have harsh shadows. You're going to have even lighting. So it's a little bit of a cheat, right? But it would work, and it would allow you to get this sharp, defined light. If, Mike, you have a situation, and this actually, folks, my next suggestion ties into our TogCHAT discussion from last week about fix it in post and get it right in the camera. Mike, if your situation is that you need soft light on your subject and you need it to be soft and flattering, but you also want a sharply defined shadow on that wall, my honest advice to you would be to photograph your subject with the softbox as close to the wall as possible. You're going to have a soft, fuzzy shadow. The only benefit to having that soft, fuzzy shadow there at that point is so that you essentially have a reference of, based on where the lighting is, this is where the shadow would fall. This is how tall it would be, etc. And then in post-production, it's actually a really, really simple trick to go ahead and eliminate the shadow that's there and drop in a sharper, harsher shadow using that original shadow as a guide. You'll be able to find some tutorials online to be able to do that. And if for some reason you can't, by all means, reach out to me and I'll walk you through some very, very simple steps. But that would be the other option. So it's really going to depend on what you want your subject to look like and how important is that softbox to your process. Okay? I hope that helps. Thank you. So, all right. Now we're going to head back to the questions here and let's see what I missed. All right. So I got Darko's there and scrolling on down from Guy Wright. Any tips for extending the battery life on an EM5 Mark II, an Olympus EM5 Mark II? 40 minutes is hardly time to get a shot. Gosh, Guy, I'll be honest with you. 40 minutes does not sound right to me. Off the top of my head, I could not even begin to tell you what the recommended duration is for the battery on the EM5 Mark II. So I'm not even going to try, but I will just say 40 minutes sounds to me like a couple of things are happening. Number one, it sounds to me like you may be using an older battery that's just due to be replaced, because that's a fact amongst camera batteries. Any brand, any kind, they eventually need to be replaced. They're batteries. They're rechargeable batteries. And or that you are possibly using an off-brand battery, which frequently, same happens with any camera brand. You can run into problems with off-brands in terms of they don't last as long, they don't work as well. And also most camera batteries have a chip in them. Oftentimes when the batteries, the off-brands don't have the chip, the batteries will give you false reads on the remaining battery power, etc. The other option that it sounds like could be happening is you may just be walking around with that camera turned on for 40 minutes with your LCD turned on in the back, your EVF turned on in the camera. Turn those things off. Set them to activate when you tap the button, because they don't need to be on all the time. And this is not an Olympus EM5 Mark II challenge. This is a mirrorless camera challenge. You run into these problems with any mirrorless camera model, any mirrorless camera brand. They are more battery heavy in terms of how much strain they put on batteries. And that is in large part because of the EVFs and the LCD use, especially now since so many photographers think that's a great idea to walk around like this, taking pictures off the LCD, which, by the way, folks, dumbest thing ever. You can argue with me all you want about that, but science wins every time. Just does. Okay. So, I would be looking at your workflow guy and your habits to see where you can save some battery life. And that will be something that will benefit you with any mirrorless camera that you choose to use down the road, whether you stick with Olympus, whether you go to another brand, that's just going to be a factor. But the other thing is to consider is how old are your batteries if they're Olympus batteries, and if it's an off-brand battery, how old is it, and are you really confident that the battery is performing the way that it's meant to perform? Those would be the things that I would look into. Okay. I got another quick question here from Darko. Have I ever used Corel products in editing like PaintShop Pro in the past as I'm giving it a shot to maneuver away from Adobe? I have, Darko, but it kind of doesn't count. I used PaintShop Pro for a while before I actually switched over to digital. So, true story. Some of you may remember this. Before I got my Nikon D1, which was my first, full digital camera when I switched from film to digital, I did for a couple of years own a Sony Mavica. Some of you may remember the Mavica. They were these odd square cameras, and you literally put a floppy disk in, good old-fashioned floppy disk. You stuck it in the back of the camera. Back in the days of the Sony Mavica, I used PaintShop Pro. In fact, I used PaintShop first, and then it became PaintShop Pro, and then it became Corel PaintShop Pro. I believe the name of the company that created it was a company called Jask, Jasc, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. So, yeah, I have not touched or looked at PaintShop Pro in probably 20 years. My understanding from the things that I see in passing, Darko, is that it has evolved impressively well. And depending on your needs in Photoshop, it definitely could be a viable alternative to Photoshop. At the end of the day, it really depends on what do you need to do. For me, my personal workflow, I do use a lot of the Adobe Creative Cloud products, including like Illustrator and things like that. So I want the interconnectivity. I use Adobe Bridge to do my culling. So that being said, that doesn't mean you should be. It just means that's kind of how I look at it. So it's not an option for me to consider, using something like that. But I would guess, and it's just a guess, I would guess that Adobe would have, excuse me, not Adobe, that Corel would have like a trial download, that you could do. So, I mean, I would recommend that you try it out and see if you're able to accomplish all of your needs. That's really going to be the key. Okay. All right. Next up here, where are we at? MSA Coach Mike. How many images can the average camera sensor record? Wow. Sorry, Mike. I'm trying to remember. I from one of the press releases in, I believe, the latest Olympus flagship, the OMD EM1 Mark III. I believe they stated, and I should probably know this, but that's one of those obscure numbers. I believe they stated that it is recommended at 400,000 shutter actuations. Okay. Mike goes on to say, if a sensor has reached its upper limit, what starts happening to the images the sensor records? Truthfully, I don't know. I will tell you that the way that I always looked at that number, the shutter actuation number, because I did have, back in my Nikon days, I did have a couple Nikons that I went way past. And I remember at the time specifically, the cameras that I was using were rated at like 150,000 and then 200,000 shutter actuations. And these, of course, were DSLRs. These were not mirrorless cameras, right? So there's also the fact that part of the shutter mechanism was, a mirror going up and down, right? I had several that went well beyond that recommended number, and I never had a problem. It wasn't a matter of the image quality degrading. It's more a matter of the mechanics. Even in your mirrorless cameras today, you still have a shutter that's mechanical that opens and closes, right? So in other words, it's moving parts. Moving parts can wear down, wear out. So, they give you kind of a, here's the estimate of how many times the shutter should be able to fire before it has a problem. But I don't know that there's actually an average at this point. I mean, I'm sure if we knew the numbers for every camera, we could make an average, but I don't know if it's necessarily an industry standard, so to speak. Okay. All right. Scrolling on down. Where are we here? This is everybody saying hello. It's so awesome to see people here from like just all over the world. Jason, how do you get better at posing a model? Kind of like giving direction and what would look good for different body types. Also, how do I improve at recognizing good composition? You freaking rock, Joe. Well, Jason, first of all, thank you. So a couple of things. I will tell you this. Let's do this one backwards, Jason. You shoulda taken my online presentation that was free that I did last week. It was called Practical Composition. So here, since Jason opened the door, let me do a quick push or pitch for this, guys. Switch you guys over to my website. Jason, to find out when it's coming up again, it will be coming up again. Go to my website, joeedelman.com, and I'll share the actual link here when we find this. Click on the presentations tab, which, by the way, I should mention to all of you, this Sunday, October 11th, I'll be presenting for ClickCon. I was almost going to say at ClickCon. ClickCon comes out of Chicago. I will not be in Chicago. I will be here in Allentown, Pennsylvania. But I aggressively and strongly recommend that you guys check out ClickCon. Awesome program. And the way they set it up, since they couldn't do it all in person this year, they're doing some of the photo walks in person with, social distancing. But the actual classroom stuff, there was no way to do it in person. So when you register, you get what they're calling ClickCon Nation, which is all of the virtual events this year. Plus, you get the full attendance at ClickCon 2021, which will be in Chicago, hopefully in Chicago in person. But I'll be presenting this Sunday night, which will be coming up. But the talk that you want to look for, Jason, if we scroll down, I think it's coming up in December or January. There it is, January 5th. So it's my first talk of 2021. It's called Practical Composition, Creating Great Images Without Rules. I will tell you this, Jason, a little word of warning. If you ask a lot of people about, how can I learn composition? You're going to start hearing them talk about stupid rules. And you're going to hear them talk about spirals and all kind of crazy, insane stuff. If you trust me as a mentor, don't listen, ignore that stuff. Take my class first. Number one, it's free. So it's only going to cost you 90 minutes of your time. That's it. I'm going to do everything possible to convince you using science that you should not learn that stuff if you can help it. And I'm going to give you a very, very practical approach to how you can approach composition. It's the way that I learned. So if you guys think I suck at composition, then don't take the class, okay? If you think I'm okay with composition, then you might want to take the class. Because I promise you, I don't do any of that rule stuff. Ever, period. Not when it comes to composition. Now, Jason, as far as the models go, how do you get better at posing a model? So this is going to sound really corny, but I'm serious. So hear me out. You get better at posing a model by getting better at posing yourself. So I don't mean telling yourself how to pose. I literally mean get in front of a mirror and try poses. Now, right out of the box, because you're a guy. I'm a guy. Like, that feels stupid, right? So do a little research. Go to Instagram. Do a hashtag search for models or models poses. Go to Pinterest. Find models' poses. You'll find thousands of resources and pictures. And then go to the mirror and you try some of those poses, right? And then while you're doing them in front of the mirror, and why is it important to do it in front of the mirror, by the way? Two things. Number one, so that you understand how easy or how hard it is to do. So that you don't become the photographer that is asking models to do something that is going to be uncomfortable. And I don't mean like pervy uncomfortable. We don't want to be doing that, period, right? I just mean like it's hard to hold the pose, whatever. If you're going to ask somebody to do that, you need to be aware of that. Otherwise, you're going to be like, yeah, look happy, look relaxed. And they're like, oh my God, my back's killing me, right? But the other thing you're learning while you're practicing it yourself in front of the mirror, give yourself directions. Move this hand, move that hand. Because you don't want to be the photographer also who says, move your hand. Well, duh. They've got two. So which hand, right? So it really is, Jason, it's a practice thing. It's a matter of putting in the practice. Just like with composition, I would strongly encourage you, don't fill your head up in this idea of a pose has to look this way or pose has to look that way, etc. Okay. PM, I see your thing there about the long question. Go ahead, put it in 2 parts, 3 parts if you need. Go for it. Just type done when you're all done, and that way I'll know that I should read it. Okay. So, Jason, yeah, practice. I will tell you that in my online presentations that I'm doing, I am working right now on a presentation, a virtual presentation I can do online that's all about posing. If I'm really lucky, it'll be ready for December. Realistically, it's going to be another one of the January ones. Because much to a lot of people's disappointment, I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to like be here with a model and have the model do 75,000 poses because you will not learn a thing about it. I'm going to do it using software virtually so that I can break down the elements and really kind of help all of you develop a mental checklist so that when you have someone in front of you, you're not trying to squeeze them into some pose that somebody told you is the perfect pose. But what you are doing is, as Jason asked, you're looking at their body type. You're looking at their body language. You're also factoring in maybe their age, maybe the type of outfit they're wearing. What is the tone of the photo? You're factoring all those things in and then building a pose that makes sense in the moment for the look that you're working on. So that's how I will be approaching it. And you guys know that anytime I do stuff like that, even if I could do it in person, it's going to be based in the science because the science works, folks. And let me just tell you, just so you guys understand, I know that I'd say this science stuff a lot. So I've been with my wife now for 20 years. We've been married for just over 15. My wife is a cognitive psychologist, for those of you that have never heard me talk about that before. When I first met my wife, I would talk about my photography and she would start turning it into science and be like, well, it's this and it's that. And I used to get really, really irritated. I was like, no. This is creativity. It's photography. Don't give me this science crap. No. You don't understand. Thankfully for me, she persisted and eventually managed to convince me, win me over that, you know what? The more that I actually start to understand the psychology behind a lot of this stuff, some of it is just good old-fashioned psychology. The rest of it is all cognitive psychology. It's based on how our brains work. But she convinced me and proved to me that the more that I take the time to understand that, I could be so much better at what I do and how I do it. So that's why you hear me bring up science so much. In a lot of ways, it's me trying to drag you guys and ladies through the same process that I went through, where it's like science is a bad word. I didn't want to hear science. I take pictures. But the fact of the matter is, science is part of everything we do. It's our life. It's who we are. So the more you understand it, the more power you have and the more ability you have. So that's why the science stuff comes into my conversations so much. Okay? All right, Jason, I hope that helps. And I hope to see you on January 5th. Okay? All right, so scrolling on down here. Let's see. And So I'm getting some partial questions here, guys. So just you got to give me more information. Valerian, uh, same. I assume you mean some tips on product photography, plexiglass, back white, translucent. If that's a question, then I have a feeling we're speaking different languages. And if you want tips on product photography, you need to ask me a specific question, not just ask me for a brain dump and expect me to give you a brain dump on product photography in the next 15 minutes. That's just a lazy question. So you give me your question, I'll help you solve a problem. I've done product photography, paid my bills with it for a while. So I'll help you out, but you got to give me a real question. Okay. All right, here. So let's see. Guy Wright. So Guy's the gentleman that asked us about the battery, right? And the 40 minutes problem. So he's brand new to mirrorless, and there you go. So that's probably a big piece of it. It is, Guy, and I'll tell you honestly, I had to go through the same process when I switched over to mirrorless. By the time I got to Olympus, I at least had a little bit of a warning because I had tried Sony for a while, right? For those of you that have been following me, you know that. So I at least understood that that was going to be a part of the change. But Guy, I can tell you honestly and promise you, those batteries will last much longer than 40 minutes. You will be able to get to a point where using the batteries in a mirrorless camera is no different than using the batteries in a DSLR camera. And it's just by tweaking some of your habits in terms of leaving the cameras on, whether or not you've got, the LCDs activated, the EVFs activated, all that type of stuff. It's not that you can't use the cameras comfortably. You absolutely can. You just have to remember that, while it's on, it's running a lot of stuff now compared to what it used to in a DSLR. So a little bit of practice, you'll get there. Super, super simple. But I would still check. 40 minutes still seems short to me, Guy. So check that battery. Okay. If you have the ability to go to a photo retailer that sells Olympus, a camera store, I would actually go to a camera store and ask them if you could try a battery that they have before you just go buy another one. Try a battery they have, and just spend a little bit of time in the store. Tell them what you want to do. 40 minutes is not a long time to spend in a store. In a camera store, heck, we could spend hours, right? So just tell me, you'd like to put the battery in your camera, turn it on, and you can give them your camera. Let them put it behind the counter. You're not going to steal their battery, and see if it dies out in 40 minutes. I have a feeling that a solid battery will last a little bit longer than that. Okay. All right. Wow, some of you guys still have Sony Mavicas. That's cool. Okay. Um, very cool. Let's see. From Rich. Joe, can you talk a bit about building photography websites and or recommending things like Squarespace versus other providers, hosts, or if they are still even needed over Instagram? Rich, that's an interesting question. So I will tell you a couple of things. Number one, I do. So here, as long as we're at it, let me at least just tell you guys, I'll switch over here. I do have one of my online presentations coming up in December. That is, whoops, is it December or is it November? Let me guess. I just scrolled by. There it is, November 12th. How to build a photography website that connects with clients. So that is one learning opportunity that you have. I'll go ahead and share it in here. But to give you some kind of direction, Rich, believe me, I'm not going to make you spend money. Let me give you the basics. It's just that there's only so much information I can give you in a few minutes. Let's take your question from the end and we'll go to the beginning. Are websites still even needed when we consider that we have social media with Instagram, etc.? Ultimately, yes. I have worked with, mentored, and helped assist some young photographers literally coming out of college with no money, right? Who are trying to get a career started, trying to build a business. And, the website, unfortunately, while it's not very expensive, because it's not, they just didn't feel they could budget the money for it right away. So the world that I came from basically would have bullied them and said, hey, you want to be a photographer. If you're not making enough money to pay for that website, you got bigger problems. And on one hand, that's an honest response. It really is. However, I helped them get their business started using Instagram and Facebook. It can be done. But the fact of the matter is, there is still an expectation amongst clientele that website exists. And it's kind of a crazy thing. It's a psychological thing, but the website is kind of a form of confirmation that you are legitimate. It's almost like back in the day, you know, having a studio confirmed that you were real. Like there's their place. Today it's the website, right? If you have a website, it shows that you are real. What that ought to tell you though, so here's a little marketing tip to keep in the back of your mind and to research. Your website's not about your photography. You make that mistake, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your effort, and you're wasting your money. That's an explanation you're going to have to take my class for. But the bottom line is, by the time they get to your website, they've already seen some of your photography. So the website is not about your photography. You're going to put pictures on it, lots of pictures, and they better be amazing pictures. Always remember that you can look like a rock star with just 5. And you can look like a total hack with 10. If 2 of those 10, or for that matter, 1 of those 10 is not that good. So that being said, what do I recommend? I do in today's world for most photographers recommend using what are referred to as templated hosting options. Templated hosting options meaning Squarespace, who sucks, by the way. Sucks. Hate them. Forget it. The reason why you don't use Squarespace is 1, they're not that cheap. 2, if you want to look like thousands of other photographers, go right ahead. Okay? And 3, their site's really not ideally designed for good SEO. And SEO is becoming less and less of a factor for photographers, but you should still pay attention to it. You just should. I would use a Squarespace alternative. I'm a particular fan of Format. I'm a customer of Formats. I have been sponsored by them in the past. Full disclosure, they are not sponsoring me now. I pay money to Format. I use their services. If you go to the portfolio of my website, so here, I'll switch back over again. When you're on my website, if you click portfolio, you'll notice the URL changes to photos.joeedelman.com. And if you look all the way down in the bottom right-hand corner, so it's actually behind where I'm sitting on your screen, you'd have to go to the website. You'll see there's a Format link. So it'll show you it's actually Format. I use Format in part because I want you guys to notice, and even though you're looking at these on video, I want you to notice how incredibly sharp these images are. So for all you full frame folks that are not happy with your photography, might I point out to you, this is a micro 4/3 image that is full frame on a web browser. So right now, this image is on a 27-inch monitor, and it's being fed to you in 1080p via YouTube. Look how sharp those eyelashes are. Think about that, guys. So, but that's part of what I like about Format, the programming that they are using to enlarge the images and to show. I mean, there you go again. You know, look at how sharp those eyelashes are. Okay. Squarespace just does not play out quite that well. Just not a fan. Not to mention, full disclosure, it annoys the heck out of me that anytime I do watch another YouTube photographer's video, I've got to listen to like 40 or 60 seconds of this video is sponsored by Squarespace. It's like, really? How freaking annoying. So I'm off my soapbox. Okay. Let's see here. Lawrence, any tips or suggestions in getting studio strobes? Actually, Lawrence, the same suggestion that I gave early on for the gentleman that was looking at getting a light, the hobbyist. Plan out your system, figure out what you ideally want, and then buy one and build your system one light at a time. Even if you have the money to go out and buy 5 lights right out of the box and you know that's what you want. If you're not already a master with lighting, don't buy multiple lights. Buy one and master it. Then add the second one, then add the third, and so on. But do not go out and buy multiples right away unless you really know what you're doing. You just don't want to do that. Okay? All right. So PM here had a question. So it's a three-part. Yeah, it's a 3-parter. So here we go. The first part. I like the photos that I take to be organized with a concept to choose makeup, styling, locations, et cetera, et cetera. So I need time to arrange these things. When they ask me to take a photo and I explain to them that it can't be done in 2 days, and he explains to them that they can't be done in 2 days, they don't like it. PM, do you think that I'm wrong? I try to give value to a photo for them and for my work, and not just to take a photo. So PM, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but you're not wrong. The challenge is you're probably dealing with the wrong clients. So making money, folks, as a photographer It's actually a very simple process. Now, when I say very simple, there's a lot of caveats, but I'm going to break it down to a very simple concept. To make money as a photographer, number one, please understand that you have to be able to run a business. If you can't run a business, you ain't going to make money as a photographer. I don't care how good you are with the camera. So let's just get that out of the way and put that on the shelf. That's a given, right? Assuming that you are able to run a business, now what it comes down to is you have to do what you do with a camera to the best of your ability because that's all you're capable of doing. You're human. And then in order to be successful, you have to find the people that are dumb enough to pay you for that. And I meant to say the word dumb in the sense that not everybody is going to like what you do, and that's okay. Not everybody is your client. So it sounds to me, PM, like the situation that you're in is you're trying to do higher end work and really trying to be thorough with the details and probably employing a lot of the ideas and the concepts and the things that I mentioned, here in TogChat and in a lot of my talks. But you've got a client that is not willing to pay the budget. So that means that ultimately this is not an ideal client. But that means that you have a decision to make. You also have to look realistically at where you are located in the world. You have to look at realistically what kind of work is it that you're trying to do, and is there a demand for it? That's the find the people dumb enough to pay you for it part, right? If there is no demand for what you do, then, you're barking up the wrong tree, basically. So that's the challenge. The other thing that you should be looking at, PM, is it's certainly a possibility in an equation like this, because obviously there's a lot of layers to this information and to what you're trying to do as opposed to what they want you to do. There is the possibility that you are not doing an adequate job of explaining the importance of it to them, to this client, in a way that causes them to see and understand the value of what you want to do. So as a result, your product, which is a photograph that is the result of all of this planning and all of this effort and everything that you're going to put into it, the perceived value of that product is not very high. That's why they don't want to take 2 days and pay that much money. So it is possible that you are not communicating that in a way that causes them to see that value. You would be a perfect candidate, PM. You may want to consider scheduling a consultation with me, which you can do via my website, and we can break down your whole process. And I will definitely help you try and troubleshoot that. But those are the things that I would consider. This company just may not be your client, or you may not be communicating things the right way to make them see the value. Okay? All right. Jamal, do I need 3 lights in order to wash out a white backdrop? I have even lighting on the subject, or can I accomplish this with 2 lights and a reflector using speed lights? Absolutely, Jamal. You can totally do it with 2 lights and a reflector. Totally. 1 key light, 1 reflector as the fill, and use 2 lights in the background. Jamal, if you're doing just a portrait, right? If you're doing a portrait and working with speed lights, if you can get about 7 feet, even maybe 5 feet, but we'll go 7 to play safe. If you can comfortably get 7 feet between your subject and the background, and you're doing a portrait, you could do what you want to do in 2 lights. I feel like this is a game. I can do it in 2 lights, right? Yeah, you could easily do it in 2 lights and the reflector. 1 light is your key light with the reflector for the fill, and then the background light. And I'm going to assume, actually, I'll give you 2 versions. Let's assume that you're going to do a vertical portrait shot. Speed light on the background, right? 7 feet gap. You're going to make sure that that speed light is set on the wide angle setting for the zoom. Make sure it's not zoomed in. You want that speed light, if this is your subject, background's back here. This is your subject. You want that speed light sitting right behind your subject, just below the shoulder level, right? And turn the speed light, instead of the head looking at the background this way, turn it vertically that way. Now, when you have it on the wide angle setting, that light is going to spread in both directions, but it's going to spread more top to bottom than it is side to side, and you'll be able to light everything that your camera sees. And by the way, keep in mind, you also need to be shooting that portrait with a short to medium telephoto lens, right? Which you should be doing anyway. If you're doing that whole same thing and it's a horizontal portrait, you see how I shoot a lot of stuff horizontally. If you're going to do it horizontally, then indeed keep the speed light head this way so that the light is spreading. And that, folks, is another one of the great reasons why when you all ask me, Joe, what do you think about round flash heads? And my response is, why would I want a round flash head? What's the benefit? There is no benefit, folks, especially not on a speed light. For these speed lights that are coming out with round flash heads, your camera's got a rectangular sensor in it. You're just making your life harder. And something as simple as turning the light sideways gets the job done. But yet people would rather go spend another $300 or $400 and get a round speed light. Think about that. Okay. All right. A couple more questions here. David Henderson, Joe, who is the one photographer who inspired me the most? Oh, man. I don't know that I can pick one, David. I mean, if I had to pick, oh, no, I can't. Let me put it this way. Probably my earliest big inspiration was a photographer by the name of Peter Turner. You should Google him. My God, this man was doing things in color with Kodachrome film that were just unheard of. Just the most amazing saturated colors. Throughout the years, there's been really plenty of photographers. I mean, I had the good fortune early in COVID. I took advantage of the fact that people had a lot of downtime. And I was blessed to be able to interview two of my biggest living idols. One is Mr. David Hume Kennerly, who was the White House photographer for Gerald R. Ford, Pulitzer Prize winner, et cetera. And then the other one, equally is iconic in the industry, especially in journalism, Mr. David Burnett, both just amazing photographers. So, Nick, where am I at here? Oh gosh, I'm over time. Here we go. We'll get Nick's in and I'll save whatever doesn't get done. We'll do it next week. So Nick, can you compare and contrast Flickr and YouPic and what seems to be the target audience and usage for each platform? Nick, I can't because I honestly, I've heard of YouPic. I have never actually been on that website. Don't know a darn thing about it. Flickr is just social media for photographers. I mean, really, that's all it is. Yes, there are some other features and some other things that you can use it for, but Flickr was designed and built initially, and still to this day, essentially remains, kind of a social media for photographers. It's a kind of a networking site amongst photographers. There's actually a lot of education to be had because, of course, a lot of you that you'd like to know all the settings and the pictures and that, and a lot of photographers, not every photographer, but a lot of photographers allow Flickr to post their EXIF data. A lot of photographers will share information about how they did the shots and that. But yeah, I'll be completely honest with you, Nick. I'll take a look at YouPic. I've heard of it, but I have never actually been on the website. Not that familiar with it. Okay. All right, gang. That's it. Episode number 220 of TogChat Live is in the books. Thank you, all of you, for tuning in. Awesome questions tonight, gang, really. And to be able to spend this time with people from all around the world chatting about all things photography, I am very lucky. Thank you. Stay safe, gang. Stay healthy. And whatever you do, please remember these words.
Thanks for watching another live episode of TogChat. Now, pick up that camera and shoot something because your best shot is your next shot. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.